Across America, a silent crisis unfolds. Families are torn apart, not just by divorce, but by a system claiming to protect children. While child support aims to provide for those most vulnerable, its implementation often creates another vulnerable group, non-custodial parents, primarily fathers. This is not about evading responsibility, but about exposing a system riddled with injustices, a system pushing individuals to the brink. Imagine a man forced to choose between paying for his child's needs and his own survival. Imagine the crushing weight of debt, the constant fear of losing everything, and the emotional toll of being painted as a villain for simply being unable to keep up with an unforgiving system. This is the reality for countless non-custodial parents trapped in a cycle of financial distress and emotional turmoil. This documentary delves into the uncomfortable truth about child support in America. We will dissect the constitutional questions surrounding its enforcement, expose the flaws in its structure, and highlight the devastating impact on families. Prepare to challenge your assumptions and confront the human cost of a system desperately in need of reform. The foundation of American democracy rests on the principle of separation of powers, ensuring no single branch holds absolute authority. Yet when it comes to child support enforcement, this fundamental principle is often disregarded. Courts, armed with the power to incarcerate and cripple livelihoods, operate with seemingly unchecked authority, often bypassing legislative oversight and due process. This lack of accountability creates an environment ripe for abuse. Non-custodial parents, often facing an uphill battle against societal biases, find themselves at the mercy of a system that presumes guilt over innocence. The burden of proof shifts from the accuser to the accused, leaving many feeling powerless and trapped in a legal quagmire they can neither navigate nor afford. Is it truly justice when the pursuit of child support morphs into a witch hunt, trampling over fundamental constitutional rights? The 14th Amendment guarantees equal protection and due process under the law. However, the reality for many non-custodial parents, particularly fathers, suggests a different story. The system, often operating on outdated assumptions and gender stereotypes, can feel more like a weapon than a shield, perpetuating a cycle of poverty and despair. The emotional and psychological toll of a broken family extends far beyond financial hardship. Children, caught in the crossfire of a broken system, often witness the deterioration of their relationship with a non-custodial parent, usually their father. The financial strain imposed by unrealistic child support orders can force fathers into a corner, making it challenging to maintain meaningful contact and provide emotional support. This forced absence creates a void in the lives of both fathers and children. The joy of fatherhood is replaced with guilt, frustration, and a sense of helplessness. Children, deprived of a consistent paternal presence, may struggle with feelings of abandonment, resentment, and confusion. The current child support system, while well-intentioned, often fails to consider the broader societal impact of its actions. Instead of fostering cooperation and shared responsibility, it can breed animosity, resentment, and a deep sense of injustice. The very foundation of a healthy parent-child relationship crumbles under the weight of financial burden and emotional strain, leaving behind a legacy of broken families and unfulfilled dreams. The American justice system, idealized as a blind guardian of fairness, often struggles to live up to its lofty image. Nowhere is this more evident than in the realm of family law, where the scales of justice often appear tipped, if not entirely broken, when it comes to child support enforcement. The very foundation of our nation rests on the principle of separation of powers, a bedrock enshrined in both federal and state constitutions. This principle, designed to prevent tyranny and abuse of power, dictates that the three branches of government, legislative, executive, and judicial, must remain distinct and balanced. Yet the current child support system often blurs these lines, granting the judicial branch sweeping authority with minimal oversight. State constitutions, mirroring the federal framework, explicitly outline the separation of powers doctrine. Article 3, Section 2 of the Michigan Constitution of 1963, for example, clearly states, the powers of government are divided into three branches: legislative, executive, and judicial. No person exercising powers of one branch shall exercise powers properly belonging to another branch, except as expressly provided in this Constitution. Yet, the enforcement of child support often contradicts this fundamental principle. The judiciary, tasked with interpreting and applying the law, has arguably overstepped its bounds in the realm of child support enforcement. Courts, wielding the power to incarcerate and impose crippling financial penalties, often act as judge, jury, and executioner, bypassing the legislative process and undermining the delicate balance of power. This unchecked authority creates a breeding ground for injustice. Non-custodial parents, often presumed guilty until proven innocent, find themselves navigating a legal labyrinth without adequate safeguards or recourse. The burden of proof, instead of resting on the accuser, shifts to the accused, leaving many feeling powerless and trapped in a system seemingly designed to punish rather than protect. The consequences of this imbalance of power are far-reaching. Individuals, stripped of their fundamental rights, face not only financial ruin, but also the devastating emotional toll of a system that often feels rigged against them. The erosion of trust in the justice system further exacerbates an already contentious situation, creating a climate of fear and resentment. Section 3, the case of Holmberg versus Holmberg, a chilling precedent. The potential for abuse within the current child support system is not merely theoretical. It has been starkly illustrated in numerous court cases across the country. One such case, Holmberg versus Holmberg, 588 Northwest, 2nd 720, mid-1999, serves as a chilling reminder of what happens when the separation of powers is disregarded. In this landmark case, the Minnesota Supreme Court ruled that the state's administrative child support process was unconstitutional. The court found that allowing administrative law judges to make final decisions on child support without any judicial review violated the separation of powers doctrine. This ruling sent shockwaves through the family law community, highlighting the critical importance of judicial oversight in child support cases. The Holmberg case exposed a fundamental flaw in the way many states handle child support enforcement. By bypassing judicial review, administrative procedures often fail to provide the necessary checks and balances to protect the rights of non-custodial parents. The court's decision in Holmberg served as a stark reminder that even administrative agencies must operate within the bounds of the Constitution. The Holmberg case is not an isolated incident. Across the country, non-custodial parents are finding themselves at the mercy of a system that often prioritizes expediency over fairness. The Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment, a cornerstone of American jurisprudence, guarantees that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Yet, in the realm of child support enforcement, this fundamental right is often trampled upon. Non-custodial parents facing accusations of non-payment are often subjected to harsh penalties without adequate opportunity to present their case or challenge the allegations against them. Incarceration, wage garnishment, and suspension of driver's licenses are just a few of the tools used to enforce child support orders, often without affording the accused the basic protections guaranteed by the Constitution. This lack of due process not only undermines the integrity of the justice system, but also creates a climate of fear and distrust. When individuals feel as though they have no voice, no opportunity to defend themselves against potentially life-altering accusations, the very fabric of a just and equitable society begins to unravel. The consequences of this erosion of due process are far-reaching, impacting not only the individuals directly involved, but also society as a whole. The 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution stands as a beacon of hope and a testament to the enduring pursuit of equality under the law. Its words, etched in the annals of American history, proclaim that no state shall deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. Yet, for countless non-custodial parents, particularly fathers, this promise of equality rings hollow. The current child support system, while ostensibly gender neutral in its language, often operates in a manner that disproportionately impacts men. From the initial determination of child support obligations to the enforcement mechanisms employed, the system often reflects and perpetuates ingrained societal biases that paint fathers as mere financial providers rather than equal partners in parenting. This disparity is not merely a matter of perception, it is deeply rooted in the structural framework of the child support system. The calculation of child support obligations, often based on outdated assumptions about income and caregiving roles, fails to adequately account for the evolving dynamics of modern families, where shared custody arrangements and non-traditional family structures are increasingly common. The gender bias inherent in the child support system manifests itself in myriad ways, often subtly influencing decisions and perpetuating a cycle of disadvantage for non-custodial fathers. Courts, often operating on outdated assumptions about gender roles, may unconsciously favor mothers in custody disputes, thereby influencing the determination of child support obligations. Moreover, the enforcement mechanisms employed by the child support system can disproportionately impact men. Incarceration, a tool frequently used to punish non-payment of child support, carries with it a host of collateral consequences that can have a devastating and long-lasting impact on an individual's life, including job loss, housing instability, and diminished future earning potential. These consequences can be particularly severe for men who are already overrepresented in the criminal justice system. The emotional and psychological toll of navigating a system perceived as biased and unfair cannot be overstated. Non-custodial fathers, already grappling with the emotional complexities of divorce and separation, often feel as though they are fighting an uphill battle against a system that seems determined to punish them. This sense of powerlessness and frustration can lead to a breakdown in communication, strained relationships, and a diminished sense of self-worth. Despite the systemic challenges and deeply ingrained biases that plague the child support system, there have been glimmers of hope, moments where the courts have recognized the injustices faced by non-custodial parents and sought to uphold the fundamental principles of due process and equal protection. One such case, Turner v. Rogers, 564 U.S. 431, 2011, stands as a landmark decision, shedding light on the plight of indigent parents facing incarceration for non-payment of child support. In Turner v. Rogers, the Supreme Court grappled with the question of whether an indigent parent facing incarceration for civil contempt of a child support order has a constitutional right to appointed counsel. The court, recognizing the fundamental importance of liberty and the potential for grave injustice when individuals are imprisoned without adequate legal representation, held that due process requires, at a minimum, that the state provide alternative procedural safeguards to ensure a fair hearing. The court's decision in Turner v. Rogers, while not a panacea for the systemic issues plaguing the child support system, represents a significant step towards a more just and equitable approach to child support enforcement. By recognizing the due process rights of indigent parents and mandating procedural safeguards to ensure a fair hearing, the court sent a clear message that the pursuit of child support cannot come at the expense of fundamental constitutional protections. Section 4, the price of silence. When due process fails, the erosion of due process within the child support system has far-reaching consequences, not only for the individuals directly impacted, but also for society as a whole. When individuals are denied their fundamental right to a fair hearing, when the scales of justice are tipped against them from the outset, the very foundation of a just and equitable society begins to crumble. The human cost of this systemic failure is immeasurable. Non-custodial parents, often already struggling to make ends meet, find themselves trapped in a cycle of debt, incarceration, and despair. The emotional toll on both parents and children is profound. As relationships are strained, communication breaks down, and the bonds of family are tested to their breaking point. The silence surrounding the injustices within the child support system only serves to perpetuate the problem. Fear of reprisal, social stigma, and a sense of hopelessness prevent many from speaking out against a system they perceive as rigged against them. It is only through open dialogue, through courageous voices willing to challenge the status quo, that we can begin to dismantle the systemic barriers that perpetuate inequality and deny countless individuals their fundamental right to a fair and impartial justice system. Section 1, Collateral Damage. Children caught in the crossfire. While the financial burdens of child support are often the most visible consequence of the system's flaws, the emotional and psychological toll on both parents and children can be equally devastating, often leaving lasting scars on families already grappling with the pain of separation. Children caught in the crosshairs of a broken system often bear the brunt of the emotional fallout. The financial strain imposed by unrealistic child support orders can force non-custodial parents, primarily fathers, into a corner, making it increasingly difficult to maintain meaningful contact and provide the emotional support their children crave. This forced absence creates a void in the lives of both fathers and children, a void often filled with longing, resentment, and a profound sense of loss. Fathers, eager to be active participants in their children's lives, find themselves relegated to the role of ATM, their interactions reduced to financial transactions and sporadic visits, often overshadowed by the weight of their financial obligations. Section 2, the price of fatherhood, financial and emotional strain. The financial burden of child support, particularly when calculated using outdated formulas that fail to reflect the realities of shared custody or fluctuating incomes, can push non-custodial parents to the brink. Struggling to make ends meet, they are often forced to make impossible choices between paying their child support obligations and putting food on their own table, between keeping a roof over their heads or facing the shame and humiliation of falling behind on payments. This constant financial pressure takes a heavy emotional toll. The joy of fatherhood is often overshadowed by a gnawing sense of inadequacy, as fathers grapple with the guilt of not being able to provide for their children in the way they envision. This emotional turmoil can manifest in various ways: depression, anxiety, and even strained relationships with their children, who may sense their father's frustration and resentment. The current child support system, often operating on the assumption that financial support equates to parental involvement, fails to recognize the multifaceted nature of fatherhood. It reduces fathers to their paychecks, ignoring the invaluable emotional support, guidance, and life lessons they long to provide their children. Section 3, a broken system, a generation at risk. The consequences of a broken child support system extend far beyond the immediate families affected, rippling through communities and leaving a lasting impact on future generations. Children growing up with strained or absent relationships with their fathers, often a direct result of the financial and emotional burdens imposed by unrealistic child support orders, are statistically more likely to face a range of challenges in their own lives. Studies have shown a correlation between fatherlessness and increased risks of poverty, lower educational attainment, higher rates of incarceration, and a greater likelihood of experiencing emotional and behavioral problems. While correlation does not equal causation, the overwhelming evidence suggests that children deprived of a consistent and positive paternal presence are more likely to struggle in various aspects of their lives. The current child support system, rather than serving as a safety net for children in need, often exacerbates the very problems it aims to solve. By perpetuating a cycle of poverty, resentment, and broken families, the system creates a ripple effect that can span generations, leaving a legacy of pain, instability, and missed opportunities. Section 1. Trapped. Navigating a labyrinth of despair. For many non-custodial parents, the child support system feels less like a safety net for children and more like a labyrinth of despair, a system designed to trap them in a cycle of debt, frustration, and hopelessness. They often find themselves caught between a rock and a hard place, struggling to meet their financial obligations while facing a wall of indifference, if not outright hostility, from a system that seems determined to paint them as deadbeat dads. Take, for example, the story of Mark, a hard-working father of two who found himself facing financial ruin after a bitter divorce. Despite having shared custody of his children, Mark was ordered to pay an exorbitant amount of child support, an amount that consumed nearly 3/4 of his take-home pay. Struggling to make ends meet, he was forced to take on multiple jobs, sacrificing precious time with his children just to keep his head above water. Despite his best efforts, Mark found himself falling behind on his payments. The system, unforgiving and relentless, responded with swift and merciless action. His wages were garnished, his driver's license suspended, and he was ultimately threatened with incarceration. Trapped in a system that seemed designed to punish rather than support, Mark felt hopeless, his spirit crushed by the weight of an impossible burden. Section 2. The high cost of silence. When fathers feel powerless. The shame and stigma associated with child support often prevent fathers from speaking out about the injustices they face. They fear being labeled as deadbeat dads, or worse, alienating their children by publicly criticizing a system designed to protect them. This silence, however understandable, only serves to perpetuate the cycle of abuse and injustice. Many fathers, like David, a single father of one, suffer in silence, afraid to challenge a system they perceive as rigged against them. David, who had always been a devoted and involved father, found himself facing an uphill battle when his ex-wife accused him of falling behind on child support payments. Despite providing evidence to the contrary, David was met with skepticism and hostility from court officials. Feeling powerless and unheard, David eventually agreed to a payment plan he knew he couldn't afford, fearing that fighting back would only result in further financial ruin and jeopardize his relationship with his child. The emotional toll was immense. David, once a confident and optimistic father, became withdrawn and resentful, his spirit broken by a system that seemed determined to silence his voice and deny him his rights. Section 3, Redefining Success Beyond Financial Metrics. The current child support system often defines a father's worth solely by his ability to provide financial support, reducing fatherhood to a series of transactions rather than recognizing the invaluable emotional, social, and spiritual contributions fathers make to their children's lives. This narrow definition of success ignores the countless ways fathers enrich their children's lives. It fails to account for the hours spent coaching soccer teams, attending school plays, or simply offering a listening ear and a shoulder to cry on. These intangible contributions, while difficult to quantify, are no less valuable than financial support. Yet they are often overlooked or dismissed by a system obsessed with dollars and cents. Redefining success within the context of child support requires a fundamental shift in perspective, a move away from a purely transactional approach to one that recognizes and values the multifaceted nature of fatherhood. It means acknowledging that financial support, while essential, is just one piece of the puzzle, and that true success lies in fostering strong, loving, and supportive relationships between fathers and their children. Section 4, A Mother's Perspective, Breaking Free from the Cycle of Conflict. While the focus of this documentary has been on the experiences of non-custodial fathers, it's crucial to acknowledge that mothers too can become entangled in the web of dysfunction that often characterizes the child support system. Some mothers, perhaps driven by anger, resentment, or a desire for control, may weaponize the system, using child support as a tool to punish their former partners rather than as a means of providing for their children's needs. However, there are also countless mothers who recognize the importance of a healthy co-parenting relationship and strive to create an environment where both parents can play an active and meaningful role in their children's lives. These mothers understand that the true measure of success lies not in the amount of child support collected, but in the well-being and happiness of their children. These mothers, often the unsung heroes of the child support system, are leading the way towards a more balanced and equitable approach, one that prioritizes the best interests of children over personal vendettas or financial gain. They understand that breaking free from the cycle of conflict and resentment is essential for creating a stable and loving environment where children can thrive. A house divided cannot stand. The American family, once a symbol of strength and resilience, now finds itself fractured, not only by the emotional turmoil of divorce and separation, but also by a child support system that often exacerbates conflict rather than fostering cooperation. The stories shared in this documentary paint a stark and unsettling picture of a system in crisis. A system where the pursuit of financial support often overshadows the fundamental needs of children for stable, loving, and nurturing relationships with both parents. We have witnessed the human cost of this broken system, the financial ruin, the emotional distress, the strained relationships, and the missed opportunities that plague countless families across the country. We have heard the voices of fathers silenced by fear and stigma, their pleas for fairness and due process drowned out by a system that often presumes guilt over innocence. The time for silence is over. The injustices inherent in the current child support system can no longer be ignored or dismissed. the very foundation of our nation, built on the principles of justice, equality, and due process, is shaken when even one parent is denied their fundamental rights or subjected to a system that feels more like a weapon than a shield. Reframing the narrative from punitive to supportive. Reforming the child support system requires a fundamental shift in perspective, a move away from a punitive, adversarial approach to one that prioritizes cooperation, understanding, and the best interests of children. It means recognizing that both parents, regardless of their marital status, have a fundamental right and responsibility to be actively involved in their children's lives. Instead of viewing child support solely through the lens of financial transactions, we must embrace a more holistic approach, one that acknowledges and values the multifaceted nature of parenting. This means creating a system that encourages and supports fathers in their efforts to be present, involved, and emotionally engaged in their children's lives, not just financially obligated. This shift in perspective requires a concerted effort from all stakeholders: lawmakers, judges, lawyers, social workers, and most importantly, parents themselves. It requires open communication, a willingness to listen and understand different perspectives, and a shared commitment to putting the needs of children first, above any personal grievances or financial disputes. Towards a more just and equitable future. Creating a more just and equitable child support system requires a multi-pronged approach, one that addresses both the systemic flaws and the cultural biases that perpetuate inequality. It requires a commitment to revising outdated formulas. Child support calculations should reflect the realities of shared custody arrangements, fluctuating incomes, and the cost of living in different regions, implementing fair and transparent enforcement mechanisms. The focus should be on ensuring accountability without resorting to punitive measures that disproportionately impact low-income fathers and create insurmountable barriers to financial stability. Providing greater access to legal representation. Indigent parents facing child support enforcement actions should have access to legal counsel to ensure their rights are protected and their voices are heard. Promoting co-parenting education and support. Parents should be provided with resources and guidance on effective co-parenting strategies, conflict resolution, and communication skills to foster healthy and supportive relationships for their children. These reforms, while ambitious, are essential for creating a child support system that truly serves the best interests of children and promotes fairness and equality for all parents. It is a system worthy of our nation's ideals, a system that reflects our shared values of justice, compassion, and the enduring importance of family. A call to action, raising our voices for change. The stories shared in this documentary are not isolated incidents. They are a call to action, a rallying cry for change. The injustices within the child support system will persist unless we, as a society, choose to confront them head on, to challenge the status quo, and to demand better for our families and our children. We must educate ourselves about the flaws in the current system, engage in open and honest dialogue about the challenges faced by both custodial and non-custodial parents, and advocate for reforms that prioritize the best interests of children while upholding the principles of fairness and due process. Contact your elected officials, support organizations working to reform the child support system, and share your own stories to raise awareness about this critical issue. Together, we can create a more just and equitable system that honors the fundamental rights of all parents and provides children with the stable, loving, and supportive environments they deserve. The time for change is now.